another NFL Showdown video, this time for Sunday Night Football between the Broncos and the Chiefs. And this is a pivotal divisional matchup. On one side, we've got the Broncos at 6-5, looking to assert themselves in that AFC West. If they win, we'll get really close to that divisional lead. Chiefs, on the other side, have looked like a completely different team over this last month. They had that really rough stretch from weeks 2 through 6 there. Didn't really look like themselves at all. But over this last month, have really turned it around. And all signs point up right now and for them to put on a huge playoff push. So either way, whoever wins this game will be in a really nice position going into this last month of the season. So overall, I expect both of these teams to play very hard. I expect a lot of eyes to be on this game as well. And of course, that means that there's some huge DFS contests out there for us to try and take down. So the over-under in this game is 47 points, making it just about league average in terms of scoring. The spread, though, one of the larger spreads on the entire week. The Chiefs, in fact, favored by 9.5 points, and that might be a little bit aggressive. I do have them winning this game pretty handily, but if I were setting a line, it would be closer to 7 points. I do expect that Broncos offense to be a little bit more productive than people expect. Again, with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback, particularly early on in the year, they looked really good. They were putting up over 300 yards passing a game. All the wide receivers were getting a lot of usage, and that was without Jerry Jeudy in the offense. So with him back in the fold, I expect things to only get more efficient for them. So it's not like I think the Broncos are going to go out there and win, but could be a little bit more of an exciting game than people are expecting. And with all the primetime games that we've had to this point of the year, who's going to argue with that? We've seen some crazy stuff happen. So without further delay, let's hop into it with our projections here for Sunday Night Football. On the screen, you guys can see my projections, and of course, as always with these projections, you can find them on my Patreon page as always. So with any injury updates that come in, I'll obviously be updating this board. But at the top of things with the quarterbacks, two solid options on each side. Patrick Mahomes, priced for the occasion, they're at $12,400. With the type of production I expect from him, though, probably not someone you can avoid. It's looking right now like I'm going to have him in every single lineup, whether that's at flex or at captain. Looking probably at 20-25% ownership at captain, the rest for me at the flex spot. Teddy Bridgewater, also a really solid option here. I'll probably restrict my exposure to Bridgewater in my Broncos heavy stacks. At $9,800, it's obviously a little bit more feasible for him to go out and pay off that price tag. But the fact of the matter is here, I expect the Chiefs to win this game a little bit handily by 7 to perhaps 14 points. So as a result, not as much offensive production going the Broncos' way. So for me, again, kind of using him in those Broncos stacks only, but those will definitely be a part of my exposure for this week. Next up, let's move on to running back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has gotten more and more usage since he's been back from injury. Somebody who's going to give you contributions in the run game, the passing game as well. At $8,600, I think he's fairly priced. I have him projected right now for 16.2 points, which is right around 2x value. Not really popping off the board or anything like that, but in Showdown, pretty much right on board with where the pricing should be. Javonte Williams, on the other hand, somebody I'm not as high on. Again, we're expecting the Chiefs to come out, look like they have these past 2 or 3 weeks, which should, again, have them in a good game script here. On the other side of things, though, these Broncos, particularly the running backs, likely to get squeezed out of the game plan. They're playing from a touchdown or 2 behind, likely going to have to abandon the run to a certain extent. And we know that this Chiefs offense can put up points in bunches. So this Broncos team can't really afford to stall, lean on that run game if it's not there. So at $7,600, he's still going to be in my player pool, particularly because Melvin Gordon is questionable. If Melvin Gordon gets ruled out, obviously a lot of that usage that you see going to Gordon here at a 12.1 point projection would go Williams' way. Would definitely make him a little bit more of an attractive option. But as things stands, neither running back is a priority for me. Melvin Gordon, in fact, is out of my player pool. If I was going to mix one of them in, it would be Williams, though. Now let's move on to some of these cheap Chiefs running backs. Darrell Williams is in line to get a few more touches this week. First off, we have Jerick McKinnon, who is placed on IR. We also have Clyde Edwards-Helaire on a little bit of a snap count, right? Because he's returning from injury, is not going to be playing 80-90% of snaps. We're probably thinking closer to 55 to 65% of snaps for him. So that puts Williams in line to get about 20% of snaps here. At $2,000, that is more than enough workload to pay off. This is somebody who's shown PPR upside to this point of the year, a lot more so than in years past. Has also been an efficient runner, averaging over 4.7 yards per carry. So I like going there a whole lot. If you want to take a complete flyer play, I do have Derek Gore in my player pool. It's only $200. only likely to see 4 or 5 touches, but if he takes one of those for a large gain, I'm talking 30 or 40 yards, he could end up paying off that really low price tag. Let's move on to the wide receivers. Wide receivers where I'm focusing a lot of my exposure. Really, the only guys at running back I'm making a priority is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I definitely think he's in a good spot. Obviously, with the team that's going to be playing from ahead, could see a little bit more usage than we expect. A couple of those cheap running backs I'm okay going to. But at wide receiver, this is where a majority of my exposure is going to be. Whether it's for the Chiefs guys that we're expecting to go out there and be extremely productive, or it's some of these Broncos wide receivers as buybacks. I do expect 1 or 2 of them to end up paying off. So if I'm running 4-2 Chiefs versus Broncos stacks, a lot of those last 2 are either going to be one of these wide receivers or Noah Fant. Or if we're going with the Broncos stacks, we're probably running it back with somebody like Tyreek Hill or Mecole Hardman. I expect this, particularly if the Broncos are competitive in this game, to be relatively high scoring. If the Chiefs win, could be a little bit closer to what we expect there at a 47-point over-under. I think that would be right in line there. But if the Broncos come out and have a very good game, to me, it's because their offense is clicking. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater, he's had some great games this year. He's also been off in quite a few games as well. But if he goes out there and throws for 350 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns, could be an interesting game to target the Broncos. They're obviously a little bit cheaper than some of these Chiefs guys. And if you're going to get a competitive game in the 60s or 70s in terms of an over-under, taking the cheaper teams more effective, right? You can fit in more of those stud options. So that's why I do have Broncos stacks in my player pool. It is conceivable that this ends up being a shootout just because offenses on each side have definitely been efficient to this point of the year. And the defenses have definitely shown their holes as well. So let's talk specifics though. Tyreek Hill, an obvious play here. He's $10,800. We've seen him more expensive in the past, and I've still been on him. Well documented here on the channel that I like his ceiling. His true 35 to 45 plus point ceiling. So in Showdown, no question that he's going to be in my player pool, both in the flex position and at captain. Jerry Jeudy's an intriguing option for this Broncos team. If he's back to full health, you can definitely argue that he's underpriced. This guy's going to see 8 to 10 targets per game when he's back at 100%. Clear number 1 wide receiver on this Broncos team. At $7,200, again, I really like that price tag. Projected for 2.3x value as of right now at 16.6 points. If you want him at captain, you can use him. That would be in some of those Broncos heavy stacks, or you can use him as flex as a buyback, like him in either type of scenario. Next up, we have Cameron Sutton at $6,800. He was acting as the number 1 wide receiver for this team while Jeudy was down. Now he's relegated to number 2 duties. But again, this offense has been highly effective. They've been throwing the ball a lot more than they've been running the ball this year. A lot more than people expected going into this year. So Cameron Sutton, he's a little bit more expensive than he probably should be, but I don't hate going to him here. He's going to be right around the same ownership as somebody like a Jerry Jeudy. You definitely have a lot more confidence in Sutton than you do Jeudy, just because of health reasons, just because of a little bit of the uncertainty surrounding him. Tim Patrick, unfortunately, seems a little bit too expensive here. He's being squeezed to the number 3 wide receiver role on this team, obviously with the return of Jeudy. And it's not like he's not going to see snaps. This team plays a ton of 3 wide receiver sets. But at the same time, at that price tag, there's just guys I like a little bit more. Just like somebody like Mecole Hardman here, who's the number 2 wide receiver on the Chiefs, the team that has a higher implied total that I have a lot more confidence in. So why not just go ahead, save the $1,400 and go to the higher projected option? So that's why I like Hardman in this instance. You can see I have him projected for 0.7 more points than somebody like Tim Patrick at 2.5x value. He's actually one of the best plays on the slate. Outside some of those value plays that have inflated point per dollar value just because of their price tag. Let's go down to some of the flyers. If you want to take some of these flyer chief option players, I don't hate going to it at all. We know that Pringle's going to get some snaps in this game in the 20 to 30% snap share rate. If he ends up catching a touchdown, he'd easily end up in the optimal lineup. Same deal with Demarcus Robinson. Likely to see right around the same type of snap share. No problem with either of those. I don't really lean one way or the other. Both of them are flyer plays for me in my pool. And now let's move on to the tight ends. First off, Travis Kelce, same type of play as a Tyreek Hill. Really high ceiling, really high floor. Just a fact of finding the salary to play him. It's very prohibitive to try and play all 3 of those options. I'm probably going to have a few lineups with all 3, but a majority of my exposure is going to be taking 1 or 2 of them. It's just not very valuable. You can't make a very balanced lineup if you take all 3. You also get cornered into a little bit of an ownership pitfall as well. Very likely to be duplicated if you take all three of them. There's really only so many combinations you can go to once you do that. So for me, I definitely like them all independently. Just the price tags are a little bit prohibitive there. So using him at captain definitely makes sense. Just like a Hill has that 30 to 40 point type ceiling. Next up, we have Noah Fant, who's one of my favorite buyback options on the slate. He's not necessarily somebody I'd use at captain. I don't think he has the 20 point ceiling that we're looking for, but at his price tag, projects for 13.7 points, which puts him at 2.7x value. That is excellent points per dollar value there, and if you're playing cash, is probably one of my favorite plays on the slate. Next up, we have Alberto. So somebody you can go to as a little bit of a flyer pick, a little bit of a flyer buyback, only $1,400. Perhaps that's somebody you can implement to try and take all three of those stud options on the Chiefs. He's somebody who's going to see red zone usage, and at his price tag, all he really has to do is go out and score a touchdown. We've seen some of these crazy backups go out and score touchdowns before, but the thing with Alberto is he's not some crazy backup. This guy's going to play 50 to 60% of the snaps for this team. He's a legit tight end 1 on most teams in the NFL. The only reason he's at the tight end 2 here is because Noah Fant's a stud himself. So, in fact, it's almost like a timeshare at tight end. They love playing both the tight ends, about 70, 75% for Fant, 55 to 65% for somebody like Alberto. Like going to both of them, particularly Alberto, since he's only $1,400. These really cheap options on the Chiefs, you can play them if you really want to go ahead and take a flyer. But for me, if I'm going to take an absolute flyer in this pool, I'd rather go to somebody like a Josh Gordon, who we know is at least going to play some snaps in the red zone. These guys know a great Blake Bell. Sometimes they don't even see the field. In fact, somebody like a Blake Bell has only had 2 or 3 catches on the year, and Noah Gray hadn't caught a ball all year until he caught that touchdown in prime time a few weeks ago. So definitely, we don't even know if they're going to see the field. At least somebody like a Josh Gordon has seen some snaps. At least Derek Gore we know is going to see some snaps. Would much rather look that direction than either of those two guys. Moving down to the defenses, not really attractive for me on either side. While both offenses are turnover prone, they also give up a ton of yardage, a ton of points, and aren't really the best producers in terms of sacks on either side. So for me, they're going to be in my player pool. I'm probably going to match the field in terms of their exposure, but not foundational pieces for me by any means. And now at kicker, I really do like Harrison Butker, somebody who can go out there, hit some of those long field goals. That's just Harrison Butter right here. Autocorrect is doing me dirty here. Harrison Butker, though, very good with the long distance field goals, has one of the highest percentages of field goals made from field goals over 50 yards. So you like to see that. They're the favorite here. They're more likely to score more points than this Broncos team, which means that the kicker also has higher upside. Brandon McManus has a big leg. That gives him a little bit of a leg up here. See what I did with the pun there. But obviously can hit 60-plus yard field goals, not just in Denver. We've seen it at other venues as well. So at $4,000, he's also a relatively attractive option. Not like I'm putting them at captain. I'm not going crazy on them by any means, but definitely players that I am getting a little bit of leverage on to the field. For the Sunday night football picks, go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you guys have as your favorite captain play. For me, it's either Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill. But again, let me know who you've got. Whether it's somebody that's completely off my board or one of those two guys, I always love to hear from you. And as always, really appreciate all of your support here for you guys stopping by and watching the content. We're going to have even more coming throughout the week, whether it's for the main slate, with our value picks and our fades and sleepers. Also, our weekly DFS live stream on Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, where we'll be covering any last-second injuries, any questions you have down in the chat, whether it's for season-long fantasy or for DFS on Draftkings. I've got you guys covered. So make sure to go ahead, leave a reminder on the channel for that. I will have a link in the description so you guys can go ahead and do so. So make sure to bring any questions with you. I'll see you guys then. And of course, good luck with all of your DFS contests.